out because she said, you know, 500-gallon or however big it was fermenters. Don't
Right,
freak.
right.
You don't have to do that. That's just how she started. So
That's right. You don't have to. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. And I had limited floor space, so I just knew that I needed to take advantage of my real estate, which was only tall. That's
yeah.
what it is.
So you
So
go with tall.
it's
Yeah,
all tied together. And you're right, but there's so many different ways and very, very flexible options to build it the way that there's so many different ways to go about it.
yeah. Well, for a while, being Bramble out in Nashville, when I visited Ivar out there, they were doing it in, I want to say they were 50 or 75 gallon spidles. So, or speedos,
Uh-huh.
I never know how to say that. Anyway, but they were just your basic big barrel-shaped fermenters, and they were, BPA-free plastic with spigots on the bottom. I mean, it was basically a bigger version of what I've got in my kitchen, and and they
Yeah.
were making their mead out of that, and it was good mead, and it was great. And he had a half dozen of them lined up around the room, and and I've been to meaderies that have, God, ginormous 5,000 gallon, ridiculously huge. It just depends on what you're doing and what you can afford.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, and for those of you that are freaking, keep in mind the fact that breweries and wineries and distilleries go out of business every single day. Somebody has to buy that equipment. I posted a link to an auction that was going on. I can't remember where it was, just a couple of weeks ago. And there was one there was down the road from me, a distillery that they bought up everything. Bad business plan, went belly up before they ever got their first batch out of the barrels. And all of their equipment auctioned locally, and I was just like going, God bless, I really want to buy some of that stuff, So I sent it around to everybody I knew in the area, And
Yeah, really good point.
yeah, so you got to watch that stuff. I mean, I know for a fact that Chris Webber out in Washington, half the stuff he got by paying attention to the local auctions and business sell-offs, and he's also hooked in with the Army auctions. They do some really amazing stuff in the Army auctions. You should check into that sometime. Stuff comes up on there, and you're like, really? It's pretty
very
funky.
cool.
Yeah, and I know people who go to farm auctions. You'd be amazed. Milk containers are made out of the same material, and you can use them as fermenter.
Dairy tanks.
Dairy tanks, yeah. And if you're in farm country, dairy tanks are a great possibility. A lot of that depends, of course, on what your local ordinances are too. I mean, your safety inspector may have different ideas, but these are all options to find bigger containers or more appropriate containers, if that's what you want, at a better price than what you would pay if you bought them new. So.
True enough. You have to take into consideration where are your technical skills.
Yeah,
and I
there's
say
that.
Only for my experience. I'm not going to be able to weld and build and customize that dairy tank into what I need. And so I knew that for my case, I wanted some shiny new tanks that would be maintenance free for quite some time. And so that goes back to knowing yourself and where your strengths and weaknesses are too. Mm-hmm. That's definitely going to tie in. So it wouldn't have helped me if I got something funky tank that I needed to try to retrofit. But
that's also knowing your friends.
It can be done.
It's also knowing your friends and what their skills
exactly.
are, and whether or not they can be bribed. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to ask my friends for help. Yeah, I mean they're free to say no, but I'm not afraid to ask.
That's true. That's a factor that cannot be overlooked.
Yeah.
The help of friends and family to help paint your facility, scrape the floors, anything really, to help people get ready. We all do it and see it.
Cut out your bar, slap your tanks into place. There's all kinds of fun stuff.
Exactly.
I watched that going on at. I went up and visited Birmingham in Delaware, and they were still in build out. And so the place was covered in sawdust, and the tanks weren't even there yet. But it was really fun because it was like him and his best friend and his cousin and his cousin's dad, and so it was family pretty much, and it was really cool because they were all just pulling together to do this thing.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Those fun times, definitely. There's fun times in all of that.
There is. Yeah, it's an experience that you'll never get to repeat. And that you can
That's
talk,
right.
That's a subject for around the family dinner table for years, decades to come.
And it is part of it. That is part of the experience of owning and running your own business is all of those build up stories and the whole thing. That's all part of it. It's not just making mead and selling mead. It's the entire story.
Sorry, trying to type and talk at the same time. All right, Gandalf had... I'm not very good at that. Gandalf had additional bits to his question. He asks, did you develop a signature mead at home with a small batch first, or did you just go for broke on the large batch and hope for the best?
I did develop small batch meads, and that time as a home brewer between 2004 and 2012, even though it was my social outlet and I was having fun, it turned out because I would make a blueberry mead every year, and I started that little homebrew gang. So I would look up recipes, and I'd be like, you know what? Last year we did more blueberries. To myself, I talked to myself a lot, and so this year I think I'll try even, and then the following year I'd be like, let's try what it's like if it's predominantly more honey, and just playing around with that. I developed. It was really kind of a little bit of the test batching in retrospect. It wasn't at the time, but for the meadery, by the time that opened, I knew what blueberry I liked. And I'd already developed the hibiscus lemon thyme and the fig and the strawberry by then. And now at the meadery, I work with test batches again to develop new batches. Yeah, the big, doing it in the big tank and scaling up has so much invested in that I want to proof it out first. And for HoneyGirl, that means really what I've worked on in the past 3.5 years is perfecting my original lineup. I like making things over and over. It's part of the charm for me to ferment the strawberry every year. I just started it for this year's batch, and I'm super excited about it. So I know that there's a lot of value to and experimenting and trying new things, but I've always been one who likes to repeat things and do them over and over. So at HoneyGirl, we maybe introduce one new mead a year so far, and we might have 2 new meads come out this year. So that's just my style. But I'm going to batch first. I've made that be a fun thing, that every year on our birthday in October is when I sample out batches or a test batch, if it's just one for that year. And it's usually 2, and I let people vote on them. And it's a lot of fun for everybody. I mean, ultimately, I get to decide. But this year we did the mango habanero and the cranberry sage, and we're going to make both of them. And I kind of knew that going into it, but I wanted to see where people's preferences were, which one they liked, and plus it's just a lot of fun. So that each year on our birthday, people can know to expect to come to the meadery, and they'll get to try one of the test batches that we might have in the future. And they like being part of it, and I like doing it that way.
That sounds like a really fun thing to do.
It's a ton. It's a ton of fun. It just goes back to those days of sharing the home brews. I just look at them. I mean, I'm a commercial maker now, but I want to share those test batches with folks. They're just 5-gallon batches, and I'm still working it out, so let's give them away.
Oh, I'll have to ask to try the test batches next time I stop by.
Definitely.
So how long do you age things before you put them up on the shelves?
I have I'm aging our traditionals a minimum of 9 months, and up to kind of however long it takes. Found last year, so 2 years has been the longest that I've aged something so far. It was a wildflower traditional. That was a North Carolina wildflower, really dark honey. And it just took a long time to really smooth out because it was so strong. And I'm just, at this point, 3 years in, I'm going to wait for that to finish. But when we opened, I had opened with just 3 meads. They had been my blueberry, my strawberry, and my hibiscus lemon thyme. And those were recipes that I can finish now in about 3 or 4 months. So I have a range, because waiting 2 years is not going to be feasible for the first year that you're trying to open. So luckily, things are changing so much. You know, I definitely started back in the day with boil the honey on the stove, and I know that there are people out there that are making fantastic meads in 30 days. I'm not there yet, and it's not necessarily my goal even, but I'm glad that's happening and that's a possibility. But my range is anywhere between 3 to 4 months to 1 to 2 years. On the traditionals, I really like that extra time because it, to me, makes them really beautiful. There's definitely a cost for that, and I honestly haven't been able to figure out, how to, of course, I can account for the time in the meadery, but really that has to be factored with what will the market bear, really. Probably nobody can afford a mead that takes 2 or 5 or 10 years to make, but we have to just figure that out against what is reasonable in the market.
Okay, that definitely sounds fair. I guess maybe as you become an older and more established, you might be able to, have your reserves or whatever and up the price because you're sticking, because you have to store them for so long for the premium products.
Yeah, it is kind of a gradual thing in terms of, at least here in the South, and it's very regional. I find the pricing of mead is going to be very tied to your region and the market, for sure. But yeah, over time, and we can have having enough on the lineup to let something sit a little bit longer. It's a balancing act, because then, there's some meads that you release and they're gone pretty fast. They develop a fan base and they're gone. So that is, I'm sure, one of those good problems to have. But it is still, it can be a challenge to have enough variety on the lineup.
Yeah, and still wait for it to all be ready.
Exactly. Yeah. Because in my experience, I can't rush it. I'm not going to be able to squeeze it out of the tank early.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd rather hold on to it and take the hit than put out something that's not ready to be out there yet, eh?
Right, yeah. And I have to say that, with 3 years under, that is something that I've seen. I can see if our sales lag a little bit, our variety was down. And that definitely was not in my business plan. I didn't know that would be a reality, but it is.
I guess you have to have a business plan that accounts for as much as you can think of, and then still be able to make stuff up when stuff that you weren't expecting comes up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it is a living document. And while I'm not necessarily going back to it and rewriting it, as people say you should and would, every year I am in my year-end process. I have to dig deep in analysis of my numbers and my production and to file all the various reports I have to file. So it's definitely a time of reflection and study and analysis and tweaking our strategy from year to year. So while I don't rewrite the business plan, we certainly see where the opportunity came in the past year and see where we could grow, and that changes. And we'll deviate and expand a little bit from where we might have said we were going to go in year 3 to 5 in the business plan. So it is a living document. We're just living it now.
Have you got any resources to suggest to people who want to start coming up with a business plan? How did you come up with yours?
So many great ones. I had been when I